call the meeting to order
Yep.
at 6:01. I'll do a roll call. Tom Flannery.
Here.
Aaron Balderson.
Here.
Carol Levy. Here. Jeremiah Kuchenberg.
Here.
Jason Martin.
Here.
For me, or?
Can I hand that over to you?
You bet.
Hand the work session over to you and Tammy from School Board Super.
Yeah, yep, so I just have a quick introduction. Tammy is with us tonight to work us collectively kind of hard on our thinking and preparatory work, I would say, for future work sessions coming for you and special meetings as you start through your superintendent search process, but also future work sessions around policy. So tonight is kind of to set the stage for some of that work, and Tammy, I hope is going to tell you more about herself, so I'm not going to steal a ton of thunder from her, but I think it's important for you as board members to recognize that she very recently has been a board member herself at a local school board, so she really understands this role differently than I would in conversation, so what a great resource for you to have tonight. So welcome, Tammy.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to just move my big giant water bottle and my stuff, if that's okay. And I'm sorry y'all are going to get to see my best side, but I'm going to focus tonight on the board, but you get to be part of the fishbowl, so you can listen to their work. Y'all are going to work hard tonight, because I might have told your administrative staff I wasn't going to do that. But you all will do the heavy lifting, so this is not what I would call sit and get, because if I were you all, I would be like, my eyes would already be rolling back in my head, please don't do that to me. So I appreciate the invitation to come, first of all. When I'm invited to a district, to me, it's like being invited to your home. It's a big deal. So I appreciate the invitation. I live and work out of my home office in Muscatine, so I really am south.
Yeah.
I'm not that far from you all. So, and I have been with ISB now almost 2 years, and the last 15 years I spent on my board in Muscatine. And I was board president for about, half of that. And it's a big job. And it's a really big job when you lead through a pandemic, when I think of all the things, right, that have come along, when you are looking for a new superintendent, there are some really big pieces of what you do. And the piece I would say is, so tonight, taking the time to learn together as a board is so important, and it's a beautiful thing to do. My role is to travel around the state, and whenever I'm asking for somebody to say, hey, will you come help us learn about X, and you all tell me the topic, and then I go, okay, tell me more. So Jason and I talked. I said, I gave him a framework of what I was thinking based on some things that he told me. I promised him it would not be a sit and get. So the association is your association. When I was a board member, I didn't necessarily know that or understand that. So you can call anytime you want. There is no charge to do that. My very top secret cell phone number is on the front page of your packet. It's funny, top secret cell phone number. Yep. So you can call at any time. You can text me. You can email me. If you text me, maybe just tell me who it is. And after the first time, I'll put you in my phone. But you can call them with questions. I would call all the time, and I would wait until about 4 o'clock on a Monday night. I'd have a 6 o'clock meeting. Because what else are people doing but sitting around waiting for me to call? I mean, I think I literally was thinking that. And I would call and be like, hey, I think I might have XYZ happen at my meeting tonight, and I need help handling it. What do I do? And I didn't always get somebody, because sometimes they're on the road or something. But it was a great opportunity for me to just hash ideas over with somebody else. So you can do that. That is our whole primary purpose to exist, is for you as a board. It's a huge job. I know when I first started my board work, I'm like, I had no idea what I was doing. But especially right at first. So anyway, so you're gonna work through your packet tonight. So you have my contact information on the front, and I'm going to start you off right away by putting you to work. There are 2 questions that are on page 1 of your packet. If you had the ability, as humans, if you could write your legacy, would you want to do that? Do you want to write what your legacy is? I'm going to tell you, I'm going to write what I want people to remember about me. That would be a really cool thing, wouldn't it? To really be able to say, this is what I want to be known for. Well, this is your chance to foretell the future just a little bit. 2 years from now, question number 1 is, 2 years from now, what do you want the public and staff to say about this board? this group of humans, because y'all operate together, if I say something really dumb at the board table, that reflects on all my peers. Once in a while that happened too. Or things that later I go, oh, that didn't come out how I thought it should. But together, collectively, we are a unit. You are a unit. So what do you want the public and the staff to say about this board? That's question number 1. So 2 years from now. The other question, question number 2, is what's the thing that you want people to remember that this board contributed to the school district? So that's probably more of a, could be this big thing I see going on over here. It could be something else that you've done. And you can pick, there are no wrong answers. So I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to give you a little bit of time to think about your question. I have blank pieces of paper. So once you write them in your packet, then I'm going to have you write each answer on one piece of paper. So like question number 1, question number 2. Okay, I'm going to give you some markers. Spelling does not count. There's not a worse speller in the room than me. I assure you of that. So don't, if that gives you sweaty palms, don't let that bother you. All right? And I'll watch when y'all are done writing, and that'll give me a sense of.
We're just writing the answers on that paper.
You can, if you would like to just write them on the paper, you can. If you want to have a copy for your own notes, you can write them, and you can write them twice if you want. You don't have to. You are not required. There's a lot of directions, wasn't it? Holy cow. When you go to write on the pieces of paper, I have 29-year-old eyes, so I would ask that you write, okay, that wasn't funny, so that's going to be much. I would ask that you write appropriately for my 29-year-old eyes.
Right thing.
You do well. There you go. Now it gets out of the bag.
Start over.
Well, I'm sorry, yeah, do I want
Or is it
to?
recycling?
I can flip. I can flip. I can flip.
Like the answer.
Yeah.
You can write miscellaneous notes if you need to. It doesn't have to be a complete sentence. This is not, we're not performing surgery, friends.
I can take them off. Yeah, I'm gonna rip some tape. Should we see those?
I don't want to sit right by you on the sides.
Sure.
You don't want me to sit right by you, probably. So it's really like your fingers.
Did you hear me?
Thank you.
Actually, I agree with that. I agree with council.
I don't even need to get under a bright light. Where's the light at?
That's why I don't get one. It's not like really well.
Did you really?
How old are you?
Okay, you have your 2 things written?
Oh,
not quite, okay.
But I think I keep on that.
There's gonna be a rebel.
Gotta be somebody up there.
And if everybody's ready, then we have another piece of the exercise that we'll give you.
Throw it away.
That would be a option. That would not be the option we're picking tonight.
Yeah, I'm all over there.
That's those areas you gotta see right on.
Sorry.
He's got green, use green.
That's from a different one, that's a press.
Yeah. You got green on your other hand.
Oh, that's next. I was trying to restore, we're in the middle of restoring the track.
Oh.
Just get it this month. That was 2 weeks ago.
That's what she said. Thank you.
It's nice to Chuck to go. This is those coaches where I'm sure they're doing this. Yeah, there's no way we can.
Okay, well, parents, let's take his up. Here's your next task. This is gonna require a little bit of thinking for y'all. I want you to, you can also get up and move around the room. I want you to take your papers with you, and I want you to share them with someone you are not sitting next to. Yes, there will be a group of 3, I know that, so, okay? But we're gonna need Aaron just a few minutes to finish up.
I'm done.
Are you sure? Okay, so, go find a partner to share both of your answers with, but not someone you're sitting directly next to.
You're off the room or just on the, here?
You can get up, and you want to get up and move, right? You just want the 2 of you, and you'll have conversation. So you may have to get up and move and go stand somewhere, and because you're eventually going to share it out, but I want you to
But you don't
independently.
want us to include this group here or just?
No, just the board. This is the work of the board. So just you all
Skip one over,
share.
I'll go with him, and you let Tom go.
See, there you go. Somebody is going to say, here's where everybody's going. Do it this way.
I have to go with somebody, so.
That's a fair, that is a fair statement. You have to have a group of 3. So there you go.
Oh, okay.
This is a good mix up though. You can sit next to any of these gentlemen.
Yeah.
See? All right.
Except for they just switched spots, so
turn this way. There
Oh,
you
you're
go.
not supposed to, you're not supposed to.
I'm not supposed to, and I'm sitting by the.
No, the two, it's all right, the two of you can still share. Where you're physically sitting, it's okay. I just want you to talk to each other.
I was following your rules.
I told you it was gonna be 2 hard hours, friends. All right, so share with each other. And you can't just hand each other pieces of paper and say, read mine.
That worked very good. So, the first question, that worked, your right
Well, it's
reasons,
staff saying.
that worked, your rules of government, your conversations, and that work, fulfilling his appropriate role of a board member, and that we are disclosure.
This is question number 2. So we'll make a contribution to the public decisions about the results of the school district. This is district operating.
Additions, new hires. Hopefully more, but I mean, you know, I mean, when you can stand here and say, talk to each other, it's very shy.
Right.
I mean, like she said, all actions.
Forward thinking.
I'll tell you what, you take my number 1, I'll take your number 2. Oh, you want to.
Were we supposed to write them on separate? I wrote 1, 2, I did.
He's not a direction officer. Kayla, help
I
me.
did 48. Yeah.
Been a while since you've been in school, Tom? I mean, come on.
What's that?
Been a while since you've been in
Yeah.
school?
Long education.
I thought she said
And facilities that are.
all this on one page, the next one on another page.
See, this is where it all works. It all works.
Now, what do we
Yeah,
do?
number 2.
What, so have you all shared? Beautiful. Okay, so I want you to post up your answers. This is question 2, this is question 1. Tape theirs on the wall, and you can just tape them, because we're going to kind of make a collage of what you have.
I didn't follow your.
These are okay. You're gonna fix it, it's perfect.
Then we break, you go back on our
Then you can sit in your original spots, yes. It's a little bit like church, right? Don't mess up the seating.
Did you get that great paint?
So you're rewriting it?
Oh.
There you go, loser.
There we go.
Yeah.
If this is the hardest part of the whole night, we're good, right? Well, it might be.
What's that?
Wouldn't that be more?
There are so many fun things about this activity, including one that y'all already talked about is the direction, who chooses to write which direction. The other really fun thing is the first 2 people and how they start to tape their paper will determine whether you have a straight line or whether they're random. Because I didn't tell you to put them right next, but you all, which is fine. There is no right or wrong. It's always fun to watch that. So, all right, 2 years from now, what do you want your public and staff to say about this group of humans? What did you hear? Not what did you write, what did you hear?
They didn't screw things up too badly.
Okay. It's a fair statement.
Be fiscally responsible.
Okay.
We want to stay in the black.
Okay.
And we care.
I think that we're wanting to be held accountable for our district, or for the outcome of our district.
So if people said that, your staff and your public said you were held accountable, you didn't screw it up, you stayed in the black. Would you feel good about that? Heck yeah, you should feel good about that. You should all high five each other. Those would be beautiful. Those would be beautiful things. So I'm going to read just some of these in a little bit more detail that you have. We are here for the right reason. We are here for the betterment of our students. We are fulfilling the appropriate role of a board member. We are fiscally responsible. Beautiful. I want to have assured the district we have Danny's replacement. I did hear that in conversation, and I'm going to guess that if we would have done this exercise 6 weeks ago, your answers might have been a little bit different, right? But you clearly, as a board now, have this huge focus of only probably one of the most important tasks that you will do as a board, and maybe one of the most difficult. I only say maybe the most difficult because you already led through a pandemic. That got hands down the hardest. But it's a lot of work to search for a suit. Okay, so we have Danny's replacement, and with that, maintain our current direction for student development. I'd also like to recognize the programming we have enabled our staff to develop, that we care about the end result of our decisions. I'd like good public perception as well as staff reception of the board's conservatism and policy referendum. Transparency and clarity, if I hesitate, it does not mean I don't, it's me processing. Transparency and clarity on policy, the board's ability to get through tough times like a bond issue, additions, new hires, including a superintendent, and pandemics. Hey, there's an S on that pandemic, so let's hope there's only, that we're done. We got our one in, we're good. And I would like to add, I would like all of this to for respect from the board. Beautiful. They did a good job. Something policy setting Alburnett schools up for the future. Oh, guiding, yes, guiding. Beautiful. This is a beautiful list. You should feel really, really good about this list. All right, the one thing, what do you want the one contribution that this board made? What did you hear when you talked to your peers?
Hiring a new superintendent and looking for somebody even better. Possible.
Okay. What else?
Setting the school up for the future, increasing enrollment, I think was a common thread with us, so based on that. Doing things that continue to increase enrollment.
That we're just future focused, is what I hear.
Did we mention staying in black?
It's all right to mention it again. It's okay.
It's important, really important.
Aaron, anything else you want to add?
I'd say it's kind of something out here, everything.
The two of you, when you sat down here, it was interesting because I heard you say, we had kind of the same things, which is also fun when that happens. So construction project has enabled the district to move forward with continued program growth and development and also enable our numbers to grow. The choice of super is not a lateral, is that right, super? Yeah. The choice of super is not a lateral move, but to build upon the groundwork already in place. Oh, super, got it. Sorry. I had like a month where I wasn't working with boards. It's like I have cobwebs, for gosh sakes. Assist the decisions in helping the district to operate in the black. I love that you all are talking about your fiscal health. That is really, really important. Quality school enrichment, yes, along with education and new facilities that are enjoyed by the district. We are being forward-thinking when it comes to our students' education while providing them facilities that they can be proud of and being fiscally responsible. The other thing that I love, and I don't always see this and you have it listed multiple places on your list, is you talk about students. Because we get really focused on the financial piece, which is really, really important, right? We talk about we want to grow. We always want to increase our enrollment, but y'all specifically mentioned students, which is a beautiful thing. I often found in all the work that had to be done, proving the milk bid, moving from a 12-ounce hamburger bun to a 10-ounce hamburger bun when there wasn't a manufacturer that was making 10-ounce hamburger buns. True story, it was like a 45-minute conversation on our board table over a hamburger bun. Seriously. What are we going to do about the boiler that needs fixed at XYZ building, we're gonna talk about the bond, like all of these things, and they're really important. You're running a business, essentially. But when are we gonna talk about the kids? When are we gonna talk about the students, right? And making sure that we're crafting out and carving out that time as well. And it's not easy. You would think it would be easy. I didn't always find that easy to be able to do. So I love that you have things about students. I'm gonna turn around and look at these three gentlemen and ask them, see anything that surprises you? Do you see anything that, is there anything you wish that was there? It's not? I told them I was gonna put them on the spot. I think they just gave me a thumbs up. That's what that is. All right. So that's beautiful. All right, so there's your legacy. So that's the piece you're gonna work on. Let's look at page 3. And let's talk a little bit about governance, because I also saw some mention about policy, and Jason shared you're gonna do some work with policy. I usually travel with a small library of books that I like. And this page 3 references this book. It's called Governance Core. I preface this by saying, I'm not a good reader. Just not. When I sit down and I sit still and I try to read, guess what happens? And then the book's like right here, and then
I speak from experience.
I'm like, what page was I on, and where was I at? I love this book because, one, it's written about us, and I say us because I still think of myself as a school board member. I still call it my board, and I still call him my superintendent, and they all know that, full disclosure. But it's written about school board members, which is what I love. It's also written in small chunks. I can digest it. If I can digest this book, anybody can digest it. You'll see that I've got lots of tabbies on it, and for a while I was like highlighting everything. I'm like, oh my gosh, if I'm going to use it or scan it, I can't do that. They're great nuggets. One of them is what I pulled out on this page, and the Governance Core. So Michael Fullen is one of the authors, by the way. You can find the book on Google. I get no paid link, commission, etc., but it is a great book. They talk about, though, the word governance comes from the Greek word kubernes, which means to steer. And I love that because for me, that puts in perspective what it is that you do when you come to the sport table, is you are steering your district. You don't have on either one of your lists that what you really want to be known for is you answered every email you got from a constituent in 24 hours. Or return every phone call, yourself, personally. Which would not be a horrible thing to do. We're going to talk about, I would invite you to think about some other ways to do that, but those weren't things you said you wanted to be known for. You said you want to be known for the steering of the district. You want to know that you're leaving it in great financial health, that you're creating great buildings, that you have space that students want to come into, that families want to come into, that you have this huge task of hiring a new superintendent. Those are really, really big, high-level things to do for your district. If you look at where the bolded verbiage is on page 3, where it says governance is a process where the direction of the organization is set. That's what y'all are doing. You are setting the direction for your students and for your staff. Structure is established and accountability, both fiscal and programmatic, is assured. So you're also going to make sure that those pieces happen. That's at that really high level of governance. Now, take a break from that thought for just a minute. Anna, can you buy that? Yeah. And I want you to look at, there's a picture of 3 things on the screen. So air traffic control, the balcony view to a dance floor, and a press box. Now, I'd like to clarify that Lily is a press box. I'm not a sports fanatic, but if you Google press boxes and you want an image, everything comes with a team name or a color. No matter what I pick, it would be wrong. So I picked the most generic one I could find, but I did have someone ask me one time if that was like a prison watch, and I'm like, no, it's a press box. It's just a really simple press box.
It's really nice.
So, it's very clean. So, air traffic control, the view from the balcony, a press box. What do you think those 3 things might have in common?
They're all elevated.
Okay. What else?
Jeremiah?
I said they're all elevated.
got people and it's all good.
Okay?
They're watching. I don't know what you do from the balcony of a dance floor,
Okay?
for sure.
It could be more.
I was gonna say communicate, but I don't know that you do that from the balcony of a dance floor.
Could you have, are most air traffic control towers that you've seen in a tower, or are they located on the ground?
No, I'm sorry.
The tower, I think,
And why aren't they on the ground?
can't see the planes.
Okay. And what do you suppose air traffic control's number one priority is? I'm guessing, I don't work in air traffic control, but
Overseeing the flights.
no one should die. No planes are crashing. I'm landing planes safely, right? It'd be really hard to do that on the ground. So if I come to you and you work in air traffic control and I say, Jeremiah, we have a little issue because when I got ticketed, you must have, for my airplane flight that you did for me, you must have missed the fact that I have status and you put me in a middle seat and I need to be in the aisle. Did you see who's sitting in the window? I need to be in the aisle. So I need you to re-ticket me. And you work in air traffic control, will you re-ticket me?
No.
And my bag should be free too, by the way, and I want an extra carry-on. What do you mean no? Why wouldn't you re-ticket me?
It's not my job.
Don't you like work in airplanes and stuff? Like it's air traffic control, like it's all the same. I do have status, did I mention that?
No. Or yeah. That doesn't matter.
Okay, Jason, I'm moving on. You're working in air traffic control and you keep a crappy seat. I need a better seat. You put me right by the bathroom.
I could direct you to the ticket counter.
What? Can't you fix it?
Just do it. Direct you to the ticket counter.
So you pointed me to somebody else who is actually their job to do that. Even though I might not be happy because I might have told you 16 times that I thought I had status. If you're standing on that balcony, looking down on the dance floor, let's reverse that. What are you doing if you're on the dance floor? When you're on the dance floor and you're dancing, what do you focus on? Yep, what else?
Music.
Okay, what else? These are all beautiful answers,
I'm
keep
like,
going.
Who's looking at you from the balcony?
Your moves.
You probably got someone to go dance me to, or take somebody out, right?
Like to the, I'm like trying to figure out what you're.
So you're focused on the things that are in front of you, right? So when you're in the balcony, you get to look at things a little differently, right? You get to watch for patterns. Who dances to fast music? Who dances to slow music? What part of the dance floor gets used? Who's on the dance floor? You get to see all of a sudden if 20 more people show up that you haven't seen before, and you're like, where did they come from? But when you're on the dance floor, you can't see those pieces, right? And the press box? I had a daughter that played soccer, and I never really could figure out the whole offsides rule or therefore ID or dumb rule, because I didn't really, I sort of understood it, but I didn't like it, and so I'm like, and what I learned is that if I was at the right vantage point, all of a sudden offsides, I was like, oh, yeah, that's how that works. She might have been offsides. But I see things differently if I'm in the press box, right? I could watch the whole play. I could understand why her coach would say, pass the ball. Don't be the hot shot, right? Don't go in, like, pass it. Let somebody else do that. But when I was on the field and running up and down the field and I would take pictures, and I was focused literally on one player, one thing, and I might have always thought I wanted my team to win, I didn't have that bigger picture, right? What might you guess these three things are a lot alike to something else that you all know well?
Scoreboard.
Your board work. Just like you're not going to re-ticket me, I have a valid complaint. I didn't want to be in the middle seat, but y'all probably aren't going to re-ticket me. You're probably going to tell me, hey, there's a different way to do that, right? Not because you don't want to, not because you're not horrible, you're horrible individuals, because you're focusing on your fiscal health, you're focusing on selecting your next superintendent, you're focusing on getting an addition done, you're focusing on how do we plan for a bond, and you're saying, here we have somebody else that can do some of these other pieces for us. This book, The Governance Core, also talks about, makes a blanket statement about how, as board members, how we're wired. And it was probably one of the most powerful things in the book to me, because it said, traditionally, board members, we tend to be doers. It's why you're sitting around the table. You also have probably been on the PTO, you've been on the booster club, you've been on the volunteer fire, the volunteer, whatever it is. And if I went around the table and said, something happened and we were supposed to have 300 cupcakes and they didn't show up today, and can you take, okay, good, you got it, good. And listen, the backgammon coach, I don't know what happened, there was an issue with some of the backgammon, so you don't know the backgammon, you buy something, good, okay. And I could keep going right around the table and y'all would go, yep, got it, yep. Because you're wired to be a doer. And it's a beautiful trait. But now when you come together around this table, your responsibility becomes, I'm not gonna go make the cupcakes, but tell me what happened so we can make sure that we don't have that breakdown in communication again, right? Or tell me that how are we gonna fix it? Or you're gonna look to Danny and say, I don't know what happened, but what do we need to do different? And she's either gonna say, yeah, I got it. We had bad weather, you might not have known, school got canceled today, here's what we had to do, but we got it. It's not gonna happen again. Beautiful. Most likely you're gonna go home and make 300 cupcakes. It's also when we know when we do it really well, it's hard not to do it. It's hard to then come back and look at each other and go, okay, we gotta step back, we gotta be in the balcony, we gotta be air traffic control, we gotta be in the press box. So I'm gonna give you a little time to kind of think about that. But as you're thinking about this governance level and what you do in your role, there are 4 numbers that are written on the middle of page 3. And I'm hitting you completely cold with this, but that first number is 8 million. What might you guess that number represents? And it's something that's important to you.
Our budget.
Oh, those are really good. What part of your budget? You hit that. You just one advanced. Oh, one more, sorry. What part of your budget? Your entire budget? If you have the answer, don't shake your head, yes or no. Okay, sorry. I forgot to cue you back. $8 million is your general fund budget. Give or take, we are not balancing, by the way, to that number. $8 million that you are responsible for. I don't know about y'all, but that's like $7,999,999 more than I have in my checking account. It's a lot of money. $8 million, and you're responsible for that. How many of your peers are responsible for $8 million? That's huge. It's a lot of money. Oh, and by the way, it has to all be spent appropriately. Are y'all writing the checks each month? But you're probably being asked to say, yeah, yes or no, right? But you hire somebody really smart who says, I know where all of these buckets, I know where all of these pieces of money go and where, and can we take some of those extra dollars and buy a drone? It seems like a really good idea. And that's probably when she's going, no, we can't do that. But we don't have to figure that part out, right? We have to say we're responsible, we need to know. And so what's your budget? General fund budget by that $8 million. 818. What might you think? I'm not going to say guess, since Jeremiah just like rattled that up. What might you think 818 is? Students. You are responsible for the success of 818 students. I think that's harder than 818 employees. You could like tell them what to do, right? You could say yes, no, but instead, 818 students, that's a lot. And by the way, from what I heard you say, you want that number to be bigger. Is your enrollment increasing or is it decreasing? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? And why is it a good thing?
Why is it a good thing?
It's one of the reasons why we did the facility project.
Assist us in
Brings more money.
financially.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a big deal to lose, somebody might say, well, if you just lose 20 students, what's the big deal? Well, it is a big deal, run the numbers, right? And also, what if those 20 students span across one from each grade? Is that at all helpful? Nope, because you gotta still staff all the same way. You can't plan any differently with that. So I'm also, kudos to you all that you know what your enrollment, whether you're increasing or decreasing, because a lot of times they work with boards and they don't know. And it's okay if you don't. My point is to really help frame up this incredibly huge responsibility that you have. All right, 8 million general fund, 818 students. What might you think 133 is?
Yeah.
Your staff. Who's the largest employer in Alburnett?
School.
$8 million, 818 students, and you're the largest employer. It's a really big responsibility, friends. That's a really big responsibility. Oh, and by the way, you're responsible for your tax levy, which I am not suggesting you change, but at the vote around the table, you could change at any moment, theoretically at any moment. It's a huge responsibility to think about all of those pieces for your community. All right, 336. What do you think that number is?
I don't know. Like kind of like high school students or students in the community.
It's good, yeah. 336.
Open enrollment.
That's good. Anybody else? No, that's right, I didn't tell you. Oh, there's your general fund, there's your students. One more.
Hold on, let's guess. Let's guess.
Oh, I love it. I love it that they don't know right off the top of their head. I feel like maybe I stumped them just a little.
You said in districts.
Let's see, you want a hint? You have talked about it tonight. Jason, you and I talked about it.
That's not fair.
That's not a hint for me.
Now I'm trying, my memory's up.
I'm gonna say policies, but I don't know.
Winner, winner, chicken dinner. 336 is the number of sample IASB policies. I don't know the exact number that y'all have, but you can figure it's really, really close to that. And you, board, are responsible for the policy in your district. The policy, your policy is your voice. We're going to talk a little bit about some of your policies tonight, and I hear board members say sometimes, yeah, but we just have to approve them. Where do your policies come from? Do you know what they stem from?
Student handbook.
IESB.
You'll have traces from policy in your student handbook. Yes, some of them will come from us as a sample. However, why would we write them?
State
It's a
around the law.
guideline.
Because it's a law. And we'll talk about that. So you have a whole bunch of your policies that you're required to have by law. Could you choose not to have them? You could. I would also tell you, I don't look at a jumpsuit or an orange. It's not my gig. I'm not going to jail for it. I don't know if you really could go to jail for not following the law, but I'm really not willing to take a chance. So there are pieces of your policy that you are required to have by law. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we dig into policy. And I will also tell you, I still don't. I don't know all 336 sample policies. My wish for you is that you always look to each other and say when you're making a decision, do we have a policy that guides the direction on this? And usually if you look to this end of the table and say that, they will be like, or they'll go, but your policy policy will help guide you in many of those decision-making things that you need to do. I often thought of my policy as my playbook. I want to know, do we have a policy that says that you can't sell, the softball team can't have a raffle of a semi-automatic weapon as a fundraiser? Do we have a policy that says that? Because I'm not feeling real good about that. And it might not be that specific, right? But I'll guarantee you have a policy on fundraising. If I say policy primer, yes? Yes. If I say policy primer to you all, does that mean anything? It's okay if you say no. Policy primer, which is really spelled primer. I don't know why I would say primer, but you do. So one of the services you get from ISB, you subscribe for policy primer that says, we have an attorney on staff who writes, when the law changes, writes the policy to meet the law. Not to meet her opinion, to meet the law. And gives it as a template to say, here's all the things that have changed. Here you go, district, take a look at these. You have the right to change them if you should desire. I always say, if you're going to change a policy, semicolon, contact your legal attorney, your board attorney to say, can we change this? Can we change the verbiage? Can we? But instead of paying someone on staff to be tracking down at what's happening every session, we'll feed those to you and say, here's a template of where you can start. And we'll tell you, here's when you have to, here's when they need to go into effect. And then, as a board, you take your policy and then you look to Danny and you go, hey, good luck, go put that into effect. Sometimes it's crazy things, like remember a couple years ago, right about this time, when there was a policy that came out and there was going to be a law that said you had to do something and then 10 minutes later you didn't have to do something and then 10 more minutes later you had to do it and you didn't have to do it. And school districts all across the state of Iowa were going, what are we supposed to do and do we have to adopt the policy? And superintendents were saying, we have no idea how we're going to make this policy work. And it was literally this back and forth yo-yo of, and we were crafting and writing as fast as we could at ISB at literally the change of every 48 hours. If that said law would have gone into effect, my guess is superintendents across the state would have been like, okay, here we go, we're gonna try this, and they're gonna say, board, here's what we think we're gonna do, and y'all are gonna be like, okay, yeah, great, and Danny's gonna go do it, and then she's gonna come back and go, it didn't work, okay, we're gonna do this. And there would have been this constant tweaking of figuring out how do we make that work. It was brand new. We'd never done that, right? Hadn't happened in the state. So it's okay to have that sometimes back and forth. How do we implement? But that's when you look to Danny to say, good luck, let us know what you need, because that might be a challenge. Okay, page 4. Here's what I want you to do. I'm going to divide you into teams, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a team of 3, and I'm going to take a team of 2, and I want you to, there's a T-chart there, and it says, governance is the role of the board. It's the work that the board does, and there are some examples there. So we already talked about your steering your ship, talked about your view from the balcony, 10,000-foot view, you're doing strategy. What I want this team to do, team of 3, is I want you to make a list of what are all the things, what does the board do at that governance level? What are the things you do? Opposite of that, you two are going to take, and Danny's not giving you answers. You're going to take the superintendent side, which is the management side, right? It's the I'm implementing side. And I want you all to make a list of what are all the things that your superintendent does. It's a really good exercise to think about what are all the things we want to make sure that our superintendent's going to do as we get a new one to make sure we can say, hey, you're doing this, right? You're doing this. Some of the descriptors that we have on the management side are you all are steering the ship, your superintendent rows. You are looking for strategy, your superintendent is going to take the tactics to put the strategy in place. So they very much work together, but y'all are going to do the overall, this is going to be the day-to-day, okay? So I want you to make a list. I'm going to give you about 4 minutes to make your list. quantity is important. You don't get extra time because I have 3 writers, and like if you're anybody's competitive, I can see where that'll go here. All right? So you all are going to focus on board, you all are going to focus on soup, and then you might guess, you're going to be sharing the answers. So don't screw it up for each other. How's that? And I'm going to set my timer for 4 minutes, and you're going to hear the duck quack.
Do you want it on these papers again?
You can do it you can write it wherever you want, but if you want it on this one, you can. And I will take copious notes when you all tell me the answers.
So don't we need to know what those answers are to be able to talk about how we're going to steer it up?
So in this scenario, the answers don't have to yin and yang each other. Okay? So you just want to create a list, and they're going to create a list, and then we'll share a list. Okay? This is the chance that you get to assign all the duties that you want to assign.
Well, there were these We're pretty well at least the top 3 years. You're going to see my number slides there. Two minutes left.
Yeah.
All right, got your list? That's okay, as long as you tell us what it is.
Nope, not done.
Okay, I want to hear your list. Talk to me. Who wants to go first? Who's going to share? Now, when your other peers share their list, write it down so you have to just say. Okay? Who wants to go first? Sue or board? Need a rock, paper, scissors?
I'll go.
Okay.
Manager of funds go.
Okay.
General fund, management fund, et cetera. So are you wanting to know how we go implement and then you want what we came up with? I'm not sure. You just want to.
So
Are we going back and forth?
So we're gonna, let's do the soup side. Let's go through that first. And then.
Just randomly say what she
Yeah,
does in a day.
Because, and bear in mind, so I'm gonna guess that at the end of the day, I won't speak for Danny, but I'm gonna guess that while she's ultimately responsible for how your funds are spent, right? Which is okay. So we're not saying Danny does absolutely everything, but ultimately, you all, how many employees do you have? How many employees does the board have?
One.
And it is? So the buck stops with her, right? You all go, yeah, okay, so if there's a mismanagement of funds, we're looking at Danny, right? When she's like, I don't know, conversation later. But you're gonna look to Danny. So let's also be clear, we're not really saying she does all, right? She's reaching out. to
She's
those places.
responsible for overseeing all of it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay.
You just read yours down then.
Okay.
And we might double up on some. but-
Okay. Hire and manage employees. Building management. I mean, as far as, delegating responsibility to individuals to get the job done.
Okay, so not building management like next door building management where I see the building going up. In the structure of the building, managing what's in the building, yes?
I guess managing that too, mine was more of, building management with, yes, we'll oversee the final say on some of the stuff because it all comes to the board, but I'm talking about from a day-to-day standpoint, from, empowering employees, delegating responsibility to those individuals to get the job done, because we know that she's the hire and the fire, so to speak, as far as employees go, so delegate, employees in the right direction.
Okay, beautiful.
On day-to-day tasks. Simple little things, I mean, this is, like today, whether cancel a day of school or not. And then quality and leadership skills for public relations with employees.
Okay,
So Danny has to run the school like it's a business, so she'd be like the CEO. So everything she does, she would delegate, not everything, I didn't need to speak, but she delegates some of that stuff that her ultimately responsible for. Okay, so funds, incoming funds, expenditures, and again, that goes to Harley some too, but she is responsible for facilities projects,
okay,
buses, transportation. We expect her to empower employees and give the employees what they need to develop those programs we talked about earlier. Obviously, she comes up with a budget every year. She oversees, the food service. She's got people for that too. But
so that you have an 8-ounce hamburger bun instead of a 10-ounce hamburger
Right.
bun or whatever is required.
Right.
Which one do we have, Danny?
No, I
See, those are the kind
Those are times,
of decisions that we don't want to see. Right? So.
But I know who does.
Food service, okay, she comes up with the school calendars. She has to, she partakes in, employee observations, student observations.
Tell me about the school calendar. What does she do with the school calendar?
Sets, when holidays are, of course, when school starts, when it ends. holidays, what we're gonna do for makeup days, teacher and service days for teacher development, staff development.
So did she just bring it to y'all and say, here's what we're gonna do?
No, we worked through it. I mean, she's got a pretty good idea most of the time.
Well, there's committee work that goes with that. So I think teacher, SIAC committee possibly, teachers.
So she's not approving the calendar, she's just bringing you ideas.
Yeah, she brings us the calendar.
Got it, okay? Keep going. Sorry. I
On the calendar still?
No, I'm good on the calendar. Keep going on what else you have on your list.
That's pretty much absolutely.
Okay.
I'm sure there's much more.
Where I will look to your peers first.
Exactly.
Anything else that you want to add on that list?
What did you say about parents and students, something? I missed it. No,
Oh,
you.
public, I didn't.
Oh, I thought you said something about parent and student, something or other. I just,
No, empowering.
Oh, gotcha.
Empowering our staff to develop and lead programs, programming and. Makes sense?
yeah.
Or I missed anything?
Building projects,
Yeah, that's,
you know that, okay.
Or are you listening here now? Go ahead.
No, I was thinking about that. So like, the other day I was thinking like when things with staff and students escalate up the chain of command, those types of issues,
Okay.
I don't know what to,
Yeah, there's personnel issues too.
Personnel, yeah. curriculum kind of comes to mind, but I know that you're not necessarily doing that per se, but
Product management, curriculum management.
yeah.
Which is a really good one, by the way.
Approving probably new students coming in, approving, it's like the open enrollment. Approving open enroll out.
Who has to ultimately approve that?
Well, we do, but it comes to.
She may bring you a recommendation, right? So if you have a student that wants to open enrollment that maybe was expelled from a neighboring school district, she may have some guidance for y'all on that. Not that that's ever happened, I'm like just kind of throwing random things out there. In all of those things that she does, what is she to you all? Besides your employee?
Communication, she bridges that gap between like what's going on in the day-to-day and not necessarily the day-to-day, but she brings us recommendations for like what we're gonna vote on at the board. Like there's so many things that she researches and that kind of thing. So like she might bring us a recommendation of what kind of a vehicle we're gonna be purchasing and that kind of thing. So I'm not saying that quite right,
It's
but
beautiful.
She really is a CEO. I mean, she's over
Yeah.
every division. She's over transportation, food, staffing, maintenance, facilities.
I've always seen it as kind of like a sifting screen. There's a lot of things that stay in there that I feel that Dan handles, and there's a lot of things that come through that come to us.
Which is a really great example. So it sounds like to me she advises you.
yeah. And honestly, I don't know what her day-to-day looks like. And because I trust what she's doing, I don't need to know the nitty-gritty of every minuscule thing that she's doing on the day-to-day. Because not only, to trust her, but then to trust who she has brought on as staff below.
To do those pieces, which is great. So I would add to your list that she becomes an advisor, she becomes a mentor, right? She's bringing that. I don't have an educational background. I don't know who knows how many actual credits that your students have to graduate. I don't know that off the top of my head, but I'm gonna look to my superintendent and go, you're telling me we have the right number, right? You're telling me that however that falls out, and she's gonna go, absolutely, okay,
When I think
good.
about that, I think about like when we had the audit in our hands with something that was going on in the district and we had no idea because we don't do school finance on the day-to-day. And it was right there in front of us and
And
expecting that our leadership was going to help us with that, and it didn't happen until we got here, so,
From
yeah.
school finance is
Right.
an animal all into its
Right.
own,
Like,
right?
I can't even, yeah.
So personnel, you talked about that, you talked about hiring the right individuals, you talked about, I love empowering, Jason, that you used that word, empowering them. Does she review the employees? An annual review, quarterly review, once a week review?
So the staff does that, the administrators.
What if, now I consider Muscatine to be a small community. And it's always a small community when you know everybody and you can't go anywhere without, you know, everybody. And my dear friend 2 doors down the street who just retired this year and knows her husband also teaches in the district, is not retired. And Bob could call me and he knew stuff all the time before I did. And it was always right. It was always right. It was actually sort of amazing. But when it comes to doing things like reviews, like I know stuff about your staff members. I mean, I could be really helpful as a board member. I mean, like I probably went to school with some of them, I'm just saying. So it would make sense that I could help in some of those reviews, right? I have really good information. You should have heard what they told me last week. We were out for dinner. We heard about their classroom management. So that would make sense as a board member that I could offer that up, right? How come? I have really good information.
It's not our
Yeah,
job.
we don't know what to do, we don't know what to do today.
It's not our job. They're not our employee. We don't know what they're doing every day. My information from dinner last week was not helpful. But it's really, really hard, I believe, when you're in a community where you know a lot of people that, and it's not uncommon, it's not unique to Iowa, it's not unique to Muscatine, it's not what we do. It's nothing about what you said you want to be known for, right? But it is really hard when your next door neighbor says, what is going on with the lacrosse coach? Because I heard blah, 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 blah. And as they start to tell you these things, or as I like to call it, the book of face, and the local chat page always has a lot to say. So we've already determined it's not our job. We can't be in the review process. It's not our place. One, we have no idea what those goals look like for staff members, right? I did not have an educational background, and so it wouldn't be appropriate either for me to do that, which is why I'm going to look to my educational leader. But when I start to get those tidbits that people bring to me, and then I'm listening, because sometimes it's interesting to hear, and I take all that in, what do I do with that information? I mean, it's hard not to hear. Somebody wants
Are you saying when you're gonna ask something from a community member, what do you do with what
And they're gonna
telling you?
yeah, they're sharing with you about a staff member. What do y'all tend to do? And maybe that never happens.
I think it depends on what's being discussed, really.
I guess from my standpoint, yeah, it depends kind of on the severity of what they're discussing, if it's something,
Yeah, the trivial or is it major?
yeah. I guess, speaking from a few situations that I've been in, you know, I would probably have a phone conversation with Danny and say, I've gotten this from one of my constituents. How can I appropriately respond to them? And not give them exactly what they want, but tell them that it's being addressed, or how can I handle that from, in my position?
What do you think? Good answer?
I typically would make a phone call to Danny and say, I've heard this. and do with it what you may.
That's beautiful. And it's hard. It's hard when somebody, especially when somebody you know that's sharing that with you. And it's also okay as a board member to say, if somebody really starts to share details that are, whether they're minor or not, but if they're enough in depth, it's okay to say, I can't know that. And here's why. Let's say that somebody in the district needs to be terminated. And then let's say they appeal that termination. So they're gonna appeal probably to one of your buildings. Then they're gonna come and they're gonna appeal to Danny. And where's their next step to appeal to? The board. And you become the judge and the jury. And if you've already had a conversation with someone in the community about, or maybe that individual, because you were being compassionate, because you were being a kind human, you were listening, the next call that Jason and Danny are gonna make is to your legal counsel to see, do you need to recuse yourself? Because once you know even small pieces of information, it becomes really difficult to then say, yes, I can still make an objective decision. And it doesn't mean, it's not about being a bad person. It's about keeping your distance on those pieces and letting the personnel stuff be handled by whomever. And it's keeping yourself safe so that when you all come together around this table, that y'all can look each other in the eye and go, yeah, I didn't talk to anybody I shouldn't have, or I didn't accidentally just let somebody walk information to me. And it's a hard message to tell a constituent to say, I can't know that, but one, we have a chain of command. By the way, y'all have a beautiful chart, because I found, y'all have an amazing website. We have that whole, that I can like go click on all of these places and it like drops down and it shows me stuff. I was like touring the ISB folks through that. I'm like, this is really cool. I can find anything I needed there. So I saw the cool little spreadsheet right at the chart that tells me exactly where I need to go. But as a board, part of your supporting whomever your next superintendent is supporting that chain of command, right? It also helps keep you out of hot water. Because when one of you has to come to the table and you have to look the other four of you in the eye and say, I sat and had beers with Joe and he told me all about what's going on and now I know his whole side of the story and I can't sit at the table with you. And y'all are gonna make a really tough, horrible, icky decision. You thought masking was hard. Personnel stuff at that level is not fun when you're, and you can't ever know. Like you can't partake in the discussion, you lead your team, you have one less person to steer. And that's really hard. So it's okay to tell your constituents. It's not that I don't want to help, but I can't know because, and it's not the, hey, I'm really upset because my daughter came home crying from second grade today. It's not that, right? It's the, hey, did you know what happened on Friday night and so this and so, I don't want to know.
I have two questions. One, does the same rule apply for students? And like, let's say it comes to an expulsion of a student. Does the same apply?
That's a beautiful question. What do y'all think?
I think it does.
So that's part of our job, is to approve that, right?
Expulsion?
Yeah.
But if mom, dad, legal guardian calls you and says, I gotta tell you all the reasons why you can't expel my student, or, heaven forbid, it's one of your own students. Think how hard that is. We're all human, by the way. But I remember the week before graduation, my superintendent calling me, telling me about a situation that happened, and a student that the recommendation was we weren't going to allow them to walk. And he just referred to her as she, and I eventually just busted into the conversation, like, it's not my daughter, right? He's like, no, that'd be a different conversation. Like, okay, like, keep talking. But no, because part of that is, one, students are protected, right? So just like we have HIPAA for adults, we have FERPA for students, and unless a parent is sharing that content with you, we can't know that.
On the flip side of that, we do investigations, right, level 1, level 2 type investigations, especially when you're talking about an expulsion. So that expulsion's coming via recommendation from our administration.
When you say we do level 1 investigations,
The
who's
district,
we?
the district.
But not we, the board.
No, no.
Yeah,
I
so
think
the-
our level one would be the principals, right?
Yeah.
All three of you guys level one investigators?
So the technical side of what you're talking about, a level 1 investigation is an accusation of abuse of a student by an adult.
Okay, but on an employee situation, is there an investigation done or? Okay, so what is that, what is that called?
That's personal, just a personnel matter. Yeah.
So when we look at that stuff, we're basically taking advice or advisory from superintendent that there needs to be action. So,
If you recall from the expulsion hearing that you have been through, there's an opportunity for the school's attorney guides you through that.
yep,
They're not my attorney, they're your attorney. I'm asked to present information, present a case. Student and whoever's representing them, probably legal, is given the opportunity to do the same. Sorry, I haven't been here.
No, it's
And you have to be, it is the judge and the jury.
So in those situations, let's say, you met with Bill on the goal of the kid getting expelled. And he was telling you all the things that this kid has done maybe for or against that kid. Then you went and sat in an expulsion hearing and were giving the facts from your superintendent and from what might have been a level 1 investigation or whatever. You can still look to the information and make a decision without having to recuse yourself, can't you? Or should you say, no, I had a conversation with somebody else and they told me a bunch of other stuff?
I would reach out to my board president and I would say, and probably my superintendent, and my guess is y'all are gonna have a call with your attorney. That is, that one becomes really important, that an individual can say, I think I should recuse myself. I would absolutely say, hey, let's talk to the attorney. Like, how much do you know? What does that look like? So that you're talking about it ahead of time, right? You owe every, you owe every piece of fidelity, both to the student in that case and the district, right? But those are the times where, and it's really hard when you get stopped at Hy-Vee and you're, or Walmart and I've got all my groceries and I'm at Target and somebody stops and they want to just start talking to me and all of a sudden I realize I can't know this. And it's okay to say, I gotta stop you and I'm really sorry, but I can't know this and here's why. If this falls through this, if it moves through this chain of command and it comes to the board, it's like a jury, right? It's like if you're called for jury duty, what are they gonna ask you? Do you know the witness? Do you know the plaintiff? Right? They're gonna ask you the question, they're gonna ask what your occupation is, right? What ties might you have? Can you really be, it's the same thing here, except,
Do you have any information about what happened?
right?
And if you do, other than what was given to you as facts, you should be.
And the attorney will help guide you through that, right? And again, that's why you have a board attorney. To Danny's point, it's your attorney. And it's okay, it's also sometimes, I didn't like to spend money to call the attorney, but I also learned it's worth the $200 to call to make the question to say, and it's probably not really $200 for one question, but to say, I have XYZ going on, this is what's happening, am I okay? Because if you're not okay, they're the person that has to defend you anyway. So before you step in it, let them stop you if that's the case. So not every time, again, you heard 3 sentences and it doesn't mean, well, I'm out. It's a big deal. It's a big deal to have to recuse yourself and people will ask you why, right? And even that, as a board, you need to talk about why did only 4 of you make the decision and not 5 of you? And you as a board will never be able to talk about that, right? Because whatever you just saw with a conversation in closed session can't be repeated.
well, in Danny's example that she used, okay, there's buzz all over, and when the expulsion's coming, but we have to block all that out, and we have to go based on what the investigation and what is presented to us. I think that's fairly simple enough to do. I don't know why, just because you have a conversation, you would have to recuse yourself.
It's avoiding the conversation so that you don't get information that went, or that somebody comes back and says, well, Jason, I talked to you for 20 minutes in the grocery store, I told you a whole bunch of stuff. And then all of a sudden your peers go, what?
Yeah, but this is the stuff I'm listening to, and we're getting,
It is, but it's the reason that you stop a community member, right, to say, it's not, and that you're saying, it's not that I'm not a bad human, it's not that I don't want to have that conversation, like, Aaron, you're a great guy, but I can't talk about this topic. I can't.
Somebody giving you information that could change your opinion about this situation.
You need to be able to come into whatever it is with a clear and open mind. But it's hard. It's hard. It's hard when you're in a community where you know a lot of people. I used to think, I wonder what it's like to be in Des Moines. Or I wonder what it's like to be in Cedar Rapids, right? Because that'd be cool. Like, you don't know near as many people. And you know what my friends in Ankeny say? They say, we just don't want to be in the Des Moines Register. And it's a real thing for them, right? And I'm like, oh, I heard one of them say that. I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, that doesn't necessarily, so big town doesn't make it any easier necessarily, right? I mean, we all have our own challenges.
So what do you do with the perception of the community, because they think you're a board member and that you can make that change on your own?
Well, part of that is that you all have that consistent messaging, right? That you're always talking about, hey, we want to support our building admin team, and we're always going to push. If it comes to us, I'm always going to say, no, you need to go talk to at building XYZ, right? I don't know what's happening. In my last 6 months of board work, I had somebody text me pictures of this is a true story. I had pictures texted to me of toilets with gigantic rolls of toilet paper in them, and then there was something else, and I got the text, and I'm like, what would you like me to do with this? Like, I don't know what building it's from, I don't know what's happening, like, do you want me to go drive around and figure out which, I mean, really, it's not that's a great call really for, you could direct them to the superintendent. I would probably say, hey, I need you to call Chris at the middle school and talk to Chris. Now, as a board member, depending if it was a higher level situation, then I thought, I would sometimes just send my superintendent, and if I was sending it to a different administrator, I would send them a quick note. I was at Hy-Vee, I had a person ask me about this, I pointed them your direction. And I would say, no follow-up. Like, one, I don't want to know. Y'all are board members. If you email your staff, I'm guessing they're all gonna be like emailing you back. But no, I don't want to know. I am just trying to tell you, I got you. I am pointing them back to you. I want you to know I support you, and I know you're gonna take care of it. And I can't know, right? But it was a little different. I don't know what happened with that. But those are, as a team, when you talk about those things and then you are able to have that conversation in the community, those are ways that you will start to help your community understand, so what is our goal? Because it's not just here, it's people think.
It's hard. I mean, it's really hard because you do care about those folks, and
Yeah, you can't.
and it then makes you feel like if you shut them down, like you're on the board, like it's your role to, like I said, the perception is that we can make something change because we're a board member. And I, like, how do you change that perception, or don't you? Or is it the consistency of saying, do the chain of command, I can't hear this?
I think it's consistent messaging. I think, people aren't always going to like what you say, or at least they don't always like what I have to say. But it's a little bit of owning that conversation too, to be able to say, hey Erin, I hear you. What I would say, a lot of times when I get a complaint, right, about a teacher, or they would be telling me about a situation that happened. So I would politely listen, I'd politely listen, and then I would say, so tell me about the conversation you had with your kiddo's teacher. Because I'm really mean. And I would make the assumption that they did, and then I let it sit for a really awkward pause. Oh, I didn't call them. Oh, okay, well, once you've had a chance to do that, I think you'll be really happy with the conversation. I recommend you do that first. I got ice cream in my car, I gotta go.
Well received. I understand where you're coming from there, and I've said that same thing before to people that have called me about different incidences and stuff like that. I cannot be on this board and completely shut them down. I have to listen to what people say. That's me. Call it a flaw if you want to, but I'm telling you, I cannot do that and feasibly sit on this board and have any kind of feel good about me at all on this board. I can't solve all the problems, I can't do the day-to-day, I cannot do that, but I cannot sit here on this board and honestly shut somebody down.
And as long as they're not sharing something with you that you have to, the times that it's, again, if it's a personnel related issue, right, or if it's something that, would you want someone else saying those things about you to someone else? That was kind of how I would think about it, or when I want you talking about my children in that same format. Because you're right, it's not, no, I can't hear anything. And it is, I always felt like part of my responsibility was to help a person understand how to advocate for themselves. And sometimes they just want to come, they just want you to listen to them. I mean, sometimes I would say, what would you like to see happen? I'm just sharing it with you. Okay, thanks. I mean, sometimes we assume that we have to take on somebody else's problem too, right?
And like I say, I've been there, I've actually talked a lot of people down, I'm sure anybody on this board probably has too. When people have come to you, I'll about guarantee it, because I've talked people off of, not off of a ledge, so to speak, but you know what I mean, off, they need somebody to talk to, I'm a sounding board, I'm there, I go through those same types of things that you said before yourself, and try to de-escalate, the situation, or diffuse, or whatever you want to call it. It's not like it's all the time, honestly, when those kind of things go down. But like I say, here again, I'll be honest, I don't not listen to what people have to say. And I'm not a big gossiper, I mean, you can ask anybody here, but I just...
Well, and that's okay. It's important. It's also important, right, to listen to what people have to say. It's if there's something that's confidential that you're like, because here's what will happen. If it gets to the place where if I'm talking to you or I'm complaining about something and I'm a district employee, if it gets to a place where it comes to the board, you can't advocate for me because you have to recuse yourself. And that's kind of what I tell people. I can't.
When it comes down to nuts and bolts in the end.
Yeah, I can be, but you probably don't get a lot of those kind of phone calls. Now, the important piece will be, it sounds like you have a pattern of how you handle that with Danny. Because here's the other thing, every board's unique. And I always tell boards, if you have a process and it's working for you all and it follows your policy, beautiful, you should keep doing it. But you're gonna have a new superintendent. So you're also gonna wanna have those conversations about, how do you want us to communicate with you? What does that look like? He or she may say, do you want me to call y'all once a week? Do you wanna, maybe it'll be Jason and I are gonna sit down once a week and we're gonna plan the agenda, or we're gonna do X, Y, Z. But it will be really important pieces to think about and listen when you're starting to work with your candidates. What are the things you're hearing them say? What's important to them?
I think it's something important, to point to, like you guys are saying, you care, a lot of your constituents know that you're on the board because you care. You care about the district, you care about the people here, you care about the teachers, you care about the administrators, and I think there's a lot of situations where constituents will also take advantage of that. Knowing that you care, they know they can bend your ear, and you'll listen because you care, So I think that's something that's important for us to remember that.
What's the personal liability for a board member?
If you, that's sort of a really big question. It's okay. And I'm trying to think about the best way to answer that. So if something, let's see, I'm going to try and think of an example. Let's say you have a civil suit brought against you and individual board members are named and...
A civil suit, like, what would be an example?
Let's say wrongful termination. I'm kind of making this up as I go.
It's a good one because it fits the context of what you're talking about.
Okay, so as a board, you do have some coverage through the district. If I did something really crazy, like I called the board attorney and asked multiple questions and tasked them to do some things, and I ran a $500 bill up or a $1,000 bill. You have a board policy that tells you who on the board can call your board attorney. Do you know the answer to that? Only your president, your superintendent can. You can direct your board secretary to, or if the majority of the board agrees that you need to reach out to your district attorney.
But if the majority of the board agrees, I'm gonna ask you, where do you have that? What's the proof that the majority of the board is voting? You can't just all stand out in the parking lot and say, oh, we all think we should do this. Like, what would your community think of that? So if I now run up a bill, in a case like that, I own the bill. Mr. Policy also probably says, you gotta give that bill to that, I would call my attorney and go, do not send that bill to my school district. It goes, send it to Jeremiah. Jeremiah's the one that called, nope, send it to Jeremiah. Not that I really think you did that. So it, some of those things will depend, right? If you do something really crazy off on your own and there's some issue with libel or slander, that one's gonna be on you, right? As an individual. Am I, without knowing all the details, is that helpful?
You have a scenario that you're wondering about?
Not really. Not necessarily, but I just.
But it's a really good question about,
There
so
is
what
a
is
personal
my,
liability.
what is my coverage? There is, and I would say there's a personal liability if you're not, if you step out of your lane.
Would they be covered just like any other employee would on our general liability?
Probably similar, because you have a policy that'll tell you kind of what that looks like for board members as well, because that's the other thing. It's a different world today than it was even 20 years ago. And it's like, okay, what am I opening myself up to?
I think it depends purely on whether or not you're acting in the lane of a board member as described in your board policies. Then yes, as you said, when you step out of that lane, you are personally liable. And again, policies work for us. We have policies around that. We can tell you what is your role.
What does that mean? You say step out of break, break the law? Is that what
Break the law or to your civil, so being liable civilly, that anybody can decide you've done something out of your lane as a board member.
like privacy, HIPAA, or?
Well, let's say you
privacy
decide-
act,
let's
we're
say
talking
you-
about students to.
FERPA, yeah.
And let's say you think you have an issue, whether it's a student or a staff member, and you go conduct your own investigation. That'd be a great place to have somebody go, whoa, 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 right? Like whatever information you gathered, how are you protecting employee privacy? How are you making, right? So that would be a really, that'd be really tough. And then when you pick up the phone and you go, hey, Aaron, I want to go over all this stuff with you. In fact, let's just go meet and have coffee and I'll just share all my information with you. That's a really good time for Aaron to go, hey, buddy, I don't know that did we check with the attorney? Is it okay that we did this, right? That somebody puts up the flag and says, I don't know we should do this.
And always remember that, I remind you so frequently about what the meeting is. There's that piece too.
So that's a really good piece, and I'm going to add that to your board side if y'all didn't have it on your board side, and that is that you know your open meeting law. Because I'm going to guess that when you want to know, can we go into closed session right now? Everybody out of the room, and then we can say whatever we want. Can we do that? Why are you all shaking your head no? Why can't I do that right now?
There's rules on why you go, yeah.
There are rules and it is the law. So if I'm going to have a closed session, how far in advance do I need to post it? How far in advance do you need to post your agenda?
Is it 24 hours?
Right forward, yeah.
Now, if you had some emergency and you really could justify it as an emergency, again, the board attorneys can help guide that, you could do that. When you go into closed session and you're looking to this end of the table to create that agenda, but you're actually putting a piece of the Iowa code that says, here's why we're going into closed session. In the state of Iowa, there are 12 reasons why a board can go into closed session, and I believe there are only 5 of those reasons that deal with education. My math could be a little off on that. Personnel, student, if you're going to talk about purchasing, making a purchase, that it would be to the buyer, to the seller's advantage if they heard the conversation. You can go to close, so let's say you're gonna buy a piece of land, and all of a sudden, well, if it's my piece of land, yeah, it's all of a sudden got a whole bunch more expensive because now I heard you talking about it. That would be a reason to go into closed session. So, but you put that little blurb on your agenda that says you're going into closed session. How long? So it's closed session is the law. It's not made up in the dark of night in my office on some crazy rules that I came up with. How long would you guess that law's been around? This is your fun fact for the night.
About going into closed session or being able to?
About having open meeting law, which means going into closed session. How long do you think that law has been in existence?
I won't go in closed session.
What would you guess?
100 years,
Okay, anybody else?
30 years.
It's either a really long time or a really short time.
It's somewhere between these two guesses, I'll tell you that.
What'd you say? Huh? 100 years.
Who,
50.
who remembers, you're right there. Who remembers what might have happened in the early 70s? I wish I could say that, well, I don't. I just read about it on the History Channel.
I was barely born.
Well, think about your history. What happened in the early 70s in this nation, in these United States? Politically,
Watergate.
Watergate. What happened in Watergate? Bad stuff? It's because of Watergate that it was determined that the business of the people will be done in front of the people. So ironically, it's barely in my lifetime, but open meeting law is because that's where that came from. So when you go into closed session and you have conversation on the topic that you go into closed session for, please don't ever put your board secretary in the position of going, they have veered so far off topic, what am I supposed to do? Do I call them back in? If you go into closed session for a very specific reason, that is all you can talk about. You can't go, hey, well, the door's shut, let's also talk about the back end coach. And let's also talk about it. No. And y'all should look at each other and go, yeah, no, we can't do that. It's okay. Oh yeah, we got off topic. It happened to me before, oh yeah, we got off topic, didn't we? Okay, we come back on. It's okay. But stop and stay focused on what that is. Are you taking any action in a closed session? Because the business of the people happens in front of the people. So your expulsion hearing, I'm going to guess, the hearing happened in closed session probably because the student asked for it. Student doesn't have to ask for it, by the way, but student has every right to. That's in closed session. The actual, whatever you do with your recommendation, that happens in an open session. And that piece is really important. So it's not really that old, 50 years isn't really that long ago, 52.
Pretty young, I think.
Yeah, so there you go, there's your fun, but it is really important, and I will tell you as board members, you are responsible to know that. And if you use it incorrectly, you can be held accountable for that. So that one is really important as well.
Accountable by who?
That's your liability.
That probably is gonna go to an IPIB complaint, would be my guess, which is the Iowa Public Information Board, and they're gonna say, you closed us out of a meeting that you shouldn't have, and then there's gonna have to be a little hearing about that, and then should you, as a board, be found in violation of that, then you get to call your friends at IASB to come in and do a very different kind of training about open meeting law. Which, it's not horrible either, but it's a little less fun than just getting to bat some ideas around and talk about writing your legacy and doing some fun things like that, in my opinion. But that's kind of that's one of the things that IPIB will do if they say, oh yeah, no, that wasn't okay. So it is important, it's important to know it. And if you ever have questions or you don't know, again, call, if you don't know the answer on this end, call your board attorney and say, here's what we're doing, is that okay? They'll guide you through those pieces. And traditionally, most of the educational law firms, I don't even know if that's correct terminology, but those that really focus on education, when they get a call from a board, they know who the board president is. And so usually they would say, hey, Aaron, our information says Jason's the board president. He's really the one that needs to call us. And then you're going to say, well, the board did, the majority of the board said they wanted me to call her, but usually they're quite on top of their game with that. Can you ever talk about what you discussed in closed session? It's been 15 years. Can I share details of closed sessions that I've been in? No. And I've been through some really, when I first was a board member, I think we had an expulsion hearing about once a year. And that like was, I found out, common, didn't know that. I've sat through a couple of really, really tough ones, to the point where I walked out of the building and I just had to go have a really emotional moment all by myself in my car until I could get myself together enough to go home. Because I couldn't talk about it when I got home. And sometimes, unfortunately, we see really tough stuff. But yeah, don't get to talk about that with your significant other, with your best friend, and that's hard as well. Those are the things that people have no idea that what a board member carries with them either. That can be hard. My wish for you is you don't have very many of those. So, all right. Danny, did we forget anything on the superintendent side?
Oh, only about 300 things, but that's okay. You only gave him 4 minutes.
It's a fair statement. I also love hearing conversations. I don't really know what she does day to day, but it's just she does a lot of stuff. Which is okay, because it's not what y'all do. Let's look at the board side. Let's make your list. I'm putting my glasses back on so I can write. What's the board do?
I usually have my 3 short answers of like policy, finance, and oversee the superintendent. Like those are like my 3 short
Big
answers.
blanket
Yeah,
answers.
I love it.
but approving the bills, looking at the future of the district, approval of a curriculum. There's a whole lot of things that we approve. We could make a huge list of that. Budget approval. We had on here listen to complaints, but we're gonna take that off the list.
Doesn't mean though that it's not, I mean,
Sounding board.
it's okay, right? We're not trying to tell people we don't ever want to talk to them, right? But we are trying to help. You want to follow your own chain of command,
We get positive stuff too.
which isn't that beautiful when that
Yeah.
Your
happens.
what's that?
We get positive stuff too.
Yeah.
Positive.
And y'all should high five each other every time you get positive stuff.
Goal setting, again, approval of like transportation, IT, watching all of the different, the funds, like, Danny takes us through a whole lot, like with Pebble and Save, and trying to make decisions and looking at the management fund as far as like, hey, what should we do there? As far as like early retirements, that kind of thing.
Open meeting law.
Yeah, I put that.
Beautiful.
Good one.
Beautiful.
We just thought of that one not long ago.
One thing I'd like you to have on both sides of your list, and I think this will be really important, is I call it the no surprises rule. I don't want to be at Hy-Vee picking out my produce and get surprised by the person who stops and says, "Oh my gosh, the bus accident today, was anybody hurt?" And I go, no surprises for my superintendent, and I will promise no surprises at the board too. So that if there's a really hot topic, I'm going to take it to Danny before the board meeting. Doesn't mean that you can't ask questions at the board table that you didn't ask ahead of time. But when you prepare for your board meeting and you look at, think about the questions that you have, if you ask them on the spot, she may or may not have the information to answer them. And if you want an answer and you want to be able to talk about it as a board, it's probably really helpful if you can shoot her those ahead of time, right? Whatever method that you have that works, and whether it's with Danny or whether it's with your next superintendent that comes in, I call it the no surprises rule, and I like to run it right across the middle so that everybody's keeping everybody in check, right? There will be times that Danny may notify you about something that's happened that you don't get a lot of details. I got a call one time from my superintendent who said, I have a staff member that I need to put on administrative leave. And I think I was told enough that there was a concern about an issue with a student and a staff member. It's really tempting to go, well, which school is it? Well, who is it? Well, which grade is it? I mean, I could feel myself wanting to say those things. So instead I said, do we have the classroom covered? Yes. Is the student safe? Yes. We've called district legal counsel. Yes. And then I said, Well, staff members on paid administrative leave, do they still have full benefits? If the person needs mental health services, I want to know which way they get them. Yes. That was on a Friday. By the way, their mother worked in the lead district in another building. So I have a message that you have to in some way communicate. The next question became concern for safety for the individual. I said, can we request well checks from the sheriff? And we did. We did consume. So when you think about the pieces of what do I need to think about at that air traffic control level, my immediate instinct was to go and say, anybody I know, can you just tell me who it is so I don't know who's going to see him or go the other way. That was what I really wanted to ask. What I really needed to think about is, do we cover our liability, are students safe, is the classroom covered? That's all I need to know. So, as you get fed information, whether it's Danny or your next superintendent, they'll tell you what you can legally know. Because then the next conversation was rallying staff to say, we want to make personal phone calls that now we've had death, and how do we do that? And what does that look like? Which is a completely different communication plan. And sometimes it's thinking about why do I have a desire to know who it is? It's human nature. It doesn't make me a bad person. But I did, even after 12 years of board service, I had to stop long enough to think about, oh, here's the questions I need to ask. So, no surprises on either side. I would really encourage you to think about that. Somebody called it I had a board one day about the Heidi rule. So whether you call it your Casey's rule or the BP station when I came in off the interstate. Lefties, yeah, I'm like, I saw it. Whether it's the lefties rule, whatever it is, right? But that you, and it's okay to say the issues being dealt with. It's okay. You don't have to have every answer. It's okay. So, you talked about open meeting law, so that's beautiful. You really kind of talked about the confidentiality piece, by the way, of some of those pieces and things you'll know. And your no surprises rule, I think, is really important. How about approving your calendar? As a board, you are required to approve the calendar, right? So Danny's going to bring it to you, but that's a really important piece of what you do. And your questions are, I always looked at it and I'm like, okay, is testing going to be done before spring break, right? I looked at the things. Did you know that the days are supposed to be numbered in the semesters? Like they're supposed to be kind of equal. I didn't know that. I'm like, oh really? I'm like, well, that actually makes really good sense. But I didn't live in education. Nobody ever said, hey, look, we have this divided out equally. Now I'm like, oh, so do we have, yeah, we're close. We're as close as we can be, right? Versus, can we get out before June 1st? Can we have testing done before? I get those things are important. But here's the piece you want to look at. Oh, by the way, did we meet the legal requirement? Do we have the right number of days? Do we have the right number of hours? What does that look like? So I think that one, so that's important. And your audit. Y'all talked about your audit. Y'all have to approve your audit. Well, you have to accept it, even if you don't like always what's there. But you have to accept it. And then, ultimately, you want to know, do you know what happens after you, well, whether you accept it or not? There's something else that has to happen with it. Orange jumpsuits, if you don't. But do you know what happens after you get the audit, you all look at it, you accept it? Do you know what happens next?
Gets sent to the state.
Has to be, by law, has to be, right, given to the state. So whether Hartley does that or whether you have an auditing firm that does that for you, right, y'all assume, I always assumed it got done, but it's a really important step that needs to happen. Oh, and by the way, it needs to be accessible for anybody that walks in the building and wants to see it. Good luck reading through that. But knowing that it's there. So don't forget your calendar, don't forget your audit, because those are really, really important things. $8 million, that's just your general fund. So the whole big pot's more money than that. And if you're running a bond issue, holy cow. And keeping all that stuff straight. All right. This work, my wish for you is that it also helps you give sometimes some talking points to your community that here's the really, really important work that we do. And not that me telling you about my experience with my student in second grade is not important, but you have really smart people that can help with those pieces while you're trying to figure out the policies, while you're trying to figure out your audit, while you're going through your budget, while you're going through your calendar. I will send this back to you. I'll send Jason and I'll send Danny a follow-up letter, just kind of recapping some of the pieces, and I'll populate this out for you in your own words, and I'll send you back these pieces of information as well. Do we miss anything on the board side that you want them to have or be thinking about, especially as they're thinking about a new superintendent?
I think it's embedded in there, but we talked about input kind of on that individual basis, but you do need that for the public to speak to you. You need to listen to stakeholders. But you were saying it, I think.
And sometimes that's hard to do.
Yeah, and
Justice.
I don't want it to get confused with the when to say I can't hear this. You do need to hear things, and I think you know that, and you want to.
One other thing I'd like to add to that, not what she said necessarily, but the board role is, I guess, and that's in conjunction with the superintendent and that side of it too, is just a simple, not simple things, but things as major as bond issues when they go through, that's major things that move this community in a major direction or not, depending on the outcome. But long story short, we all decided on when we wanted to have that, vote, and when it was approved, we want to pass, we have to approve it too. So those are major topics that rest upon the board's approval too.
And advocate for it.
Exactly.
And that's huge. And bond referendums, statistically, the number of times they don't pass the first time is huge. Huge.
Mhm.
So they are a ton of work, so that's a great point. I would also encourage you to think about both sides of your list is your learning together. Because I'm going to guess that you look for Danny to see professional development. So she's probably doing that either through ISFLIC, she's doing it through School Administrators of Iowa. Well, hopefully you all will continue to do the same thing through Iowa Association of School Boards, through whatever that looks like. But that together, that you get to take some time to do some of that work. And talking, like bring up these things so that I get to hear you say to each other, hey, we're kind of said the same thing. We sound a little different, but how about that? We're on the same page. And you may have said, yeah, well, we kind of knew. Well, now you really know it. But getting to have that kind of conversation is really important. I packed your suitcase so full tonight. So I'm going to give you just a couple of more things that I just want to highlight. If you look at starting at page 7, and it takes you through page 12, I think. I put several policies in there for you, and I took the liberty highlighting them. And I'm going to just look at, if you look at page 7, so these are your policies. Whenever I said your policy is your voice, board, and if you don't like your policies, change them. Great big semicolon, contact your legal attorney when you do that, your board attorney, just to make sure that you're not inadvertently changing something you shouldn't. If you look at page 8, towards the bottom, do you see where it says legal reference? And most of your policies show this. This tells you exactly where in Iowa code it comes from. So Iowa code essentially says about public participation in board meetings. The work of the public needs to be done in the public. They need to see what's happening. They need to be able to hear what's happening. They also have to respect that you have work to get done, and you need to be able to operate. So you are a meeting in the public. You are not a meeting of the public. Because of that, you set aside time, and you say, we have a policy that says, if you want to speak to the board, and here's what that looks like. So you've got your information there about how long somebody gets to speak, what you want them, how you want them to address the board. When they do that, can you have a conversation with that person? So if I approach you and I want to talk about putting chocolate milk in all the drinking fountains, because it's one of my favorite topics, and I do that during public speak, can we have a conversation about that? Can I converse with the board? Why? Why do you say no?
Because we're not there to address public concerns necessarily at that point? It wasn't on the agenda?
It wasn't on the agenda, but you told me earlier that by law, you're required to post your agenda at least 24 hours in advance, and I'm gonna guess you do it more than that. I might wanna, maybe somebody else wanted to talk about chocolate milk in the drinking fountain, so maybe they would have come to the meeting if they would have known it's gonna be on the agenda, right? So if you converse, now you're talking about something that's not on your agenda, and it's a violation of the law. You're not trying to be difficult. And so when you think about whatever conversation you have, a lot of times I would have people who say, I'm gonna come to a board meeting. Absolutely you should, but here's what you need to know. You're gonna get 3 minutes, and you only get to talk at us. We can't engage in conversation. But here's some other ways that we can engage in conversation. You can call me, you can email me, I'm happy to meet you for coffee, right? Then, one-on-one, as a board member, I can have a conversation with you, but not at the board table. And again, it's not because you don't want to hear from your constituents. It's because the law says if it's not on your agenda, right? And then that's the piece about you can't have the back and forth. So it's not to me. That's probably one of the hardest, and I would also say one of the most important ones. I always, it's hard if you think about somebody who comes and speaks before the board. 3 minutes, which is what our limit was, went like that. I can hardly get my name out and my address, and it's like I've already used up 45 seconds, right? And I might be a little nervous, I might be a little emotional, I might be a whole bunch of things, but it's a little intimidating to come sit here in front of you all and you all just look at me, because you can't say anything, right? So however you tee it up to say, thanks, we're gonna open the mic tonight for blah, 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 public speak, here's how this works. Iowa code tells us we can't engage, but you're welcome to address us. But please know that because we're not engaging, it doesn't mean we're not listening, right? However you want that to be, but that messaging becomes really important. It's a piece of helping your community understand here's what we do. Okay? You have just some other policies that I put in here that are beautiful that talk about following your chain of command. That you have that really cool chart on your website. And by the way, your portrait of a graduate is some really, really cool work that you don't see everywhere in every district either. So y'all should be really proud of that work. I don't know how recently you did that. I printed all that stuff off, and I'm not kidding. I said to my peer who covers the other side of the state, I'm like, go look at this website. And she said to me, how can we save it? I'm like, well, right now I'm saving it up here. I go, I can't save every piece of the website, but the layout is great. There is really, really great information on there to also point people to that I can have my own self-service. So I wish my team's website looked like that. I had a little website in there. All right. Here is your second to last task. On page 17, there's a piece of paper that's called What I Must Do. This is your 30-day commitment to yourself. You just gave me 2 hours and probably 7 minutes by the time you're all done, and you worked really hard. As a result of all the things that you talked about tonight, of all the things you heard, what do you want to commit to doing better, to doing more of, to think more often about? This is a letter to yourself. I'm going to give you an envelope. You're going to rip this out of your packet. You're going to write your letter to yourself. You can say, dear Jason, love Jason if you want. And you're going to, that's funny, you're going to fold it up. You're going to put it in the envelope. You're going to seal it. You're going to address it to yourself. I'm going to take it with me. In 30 days, you're going to get a letter from yourself, because I can't pop out of your mailbox, but wouldn't that be fun? They don't make mailboxes up there. And you're going to get this envelope, and you're going to go, what is this in my own handwriting? And it's your own check-in with yourself. What did I say? What did I commit to say that I wanted to think about, be conscious of, do more of, do less of? It doesn't have to be beautiful writing. It doesn't have to be eloquent. It can be. But I'm going to let you do that. And I'm going to get you envelopes. Okay? once you have your letter done, there's also an evaluation form at your place. It would be really helpful for me. You'll give me a few takeaways, will be helpful. If there's a question about what would you like to spend more time on. Don't forget to seal your envelope.
First things first.
Yeah, and you'll know that more than levels, right?
Plus also you have to negotiations are coming up too, so there's a lot more. But we will do that.
We forgot to write negotiations. What board does? What board does?
And you know what, help with, document talks about questions to ask. and you want me to send that to you,
Yeah.
I can do that. Send myself an email, so I'm gonna make sure
Will you
copies.
send it to me? I'm gonna send an email out with all of the proposals, and then I'll just put that in there too.
Just tweet it out, your work, friends. As you finish up your information one, again, I apologize because now we're almost 15 minutes late. I'm incredibly grateful for the work you do in your community. It impacts me. We live in the same state. Y'all aren't that far from me. I am incredibly passionate about the work you do. I know that you aren't thanked often. You are leaders in your community, and the work you do is so important. 818 students important to be exact. So thank you. Thank you for what you do, because it's a lot of time, it's a lot of energy. And I would encourage you, as you approach a legislative session that's about to start, reach out to your local legislators, let them know that you could be a great resource for them, just as they have questions, as they make decisions about things that will impact education. And I'm anxious to come back and see this in the daylight when it's all done as well. So thank you for the invite, and truly, if there's things I can do, call me. I'm happy to, or text me or email me, happy to help in any way that I can. But
We appreciate you coming out.
busy spring ahead of you. An exciting one, but a busy one. So, and better weather next time I come. Let's just put the order in now if we can.
Can you make that happen?
I will. Somebody out. There you go. Somebody should.
Thank you, Tammy, and Jason, procedurally, you just close the session when you're ready.
So adjourn the meeting
Yep.
at 6:50 or 8:15?